and a 1 and a 2.
When I was just a Mueller man, I studied canon law. All effort was a challenge, it was just to please my pa. Then came the storm, the lightning struck, I called upon St. Anne. I shaved my head, I took my vows in Augustinian. No papal bulls, indulgences, and transubstantiation. Speak your mind against them and face excommunication. Nail your theses to the door, let's start a reformation. Papal bulls, indulgences, and transubstantiation. When Tetzel came near Wittenberg, St. Peter's prophet sword, I wrote a little notice for the All Saints Bulletin Board. You cannot purchase merits more justified by grace. Here's 95 more reasons, brother Tetzel, in your face. So papal bulls, indulgences, and transubstantiation. Speak your mind against them and face excommunication. Nail your theses to the door, let's start a reformation. Papal bulls, indulgences, and transubstantiation. They loved my tracts, adored my wit, or were exemplar. The Pope, however, hauled me up before the Emperor. Are these your books to you recant? King Charles did demand. I will not change my diet, so God help me, here I stand. No papal bulls, indulgences, and transubstantiation. Speak your mind against them and face excommunication. Nail your theses to the door, let's start a reformation. Papal bulls, indulgences, and transubstantiation. Frederick took the wise approach, responding to my words by knighting George as hostage in the kingdom of the birds. Use Brother Martin's model if the languages you see. Stay locked inside a castle with your Hebrew and your Greek. Oh, papal bulls, indulgences, and transubstantiation. Speak your mind against them and face excommunication. Nail your theses to the door, let's start a reformation. Papal bulls, indulgences, and transubstantiation. Let's raise our steins and conquered books while gathered in this place, and spread the word that Catholic is spelled with lowercase. The word remains unfettered when the Spirit gets his chance. So come on, Katie, drop your lute and join us in our dance. So, papal bulls, indulgences, and transubstantiation. Speak your mind against them and face excommunication. Nail your theses to the door, let's start a reformation. Papal bulls, indulgences, and transubstantiation.
Hello everyone. It's good to see you today. Today we are going to learn about the effects of the spread of the Reformation on Central Europe and in particular, the Germanic states. We will start our story today in 1555 when a group of German princes from the Holy Roman Empire met in Augsburg. This meeting created a permanent division of the Holy Roman Empire because they decided that each prince can choose if the land that they rule will be Catholic or Protestant. A result of the Peace of Augsburg was that the German regions would not be unified for a very long time. There was no religious unity, and because each prince was responsible for his own area, there was no interdependence. The German princes saw no reason to band together to create one religion, and no reason to join together politically. The Peace of Augsburg was the main reason why Germany would be disunited. The north of Germany had converted to Protestantism, the south remained mainly Catholic. This would cause problems later on, as you will see in this presentation. Another effect was that the authority of the Pope was ended in most of the German states. Basically, every denomination of Protestantism, Lutherans, Calvinists and Anglicans, refused to recognize the Pope's authority in any religious matter. As the northern German states were Protestant, the Pope had no religious or political control there. Meanwhile, the powerful noble German family, the Habsburgs, maintained their Catholicism and continued to support the Catholic Church. This family controlled large parts of the Holy Roman Empire and eventually controlled Spain too. Their goal, although unsuccessful, was to unite the Holy Roman Empire. Anyway, as I just mentioned, they stayed Catholic, even though most of the other German nobles converted to Protestantism. This would prove to be a point of friction in the future. So the power of the Holy Roman Empire was diminishing as well as the power of the Pope. There were already political and territorial disagreements. Once religious disunity was added on top, remember the North had become Protestant, while the South remained Catholic, then this region of Europe was no longer unified, and couldn't rely on backing from the Pope. Consequently, the region became less influential and eventually civil war ensued. This civil war became known as the 30 Years' War. It was fought in the German states, the Holy Roman Empire, and resulted in the region being divided, with the north becoming Protestant and the south remained Catholic. There is even a story about some Protestant rebels throwing two representatives of the Holy Roman Emperor out of a castle window. Ouch. There were other causes of the 30 Years' War. For example, the Habsburgs tried to control the Protestants that they ruled over. They also supported Catholic Spain and Poland in their conflicts. The Netherlands and Sweden would come to Catholic aid of any Protestants that they felt were being oppressed. War was inevitable. This is an eyewitness account of some of the action from the 30 Years' War. The eyewitness said the following. Then there were naught but beating and burning, plundering, torture and murder in this frenzied rage. The great and splendid city that had stood like a fair princess in the land was now, in its hour of direst need and unutterable distress and woe, given over to the flames, and thousands of innocent men, women, and children were tortured and put to death. That sounds like fun. Actually, the 30 Years' War saw many atrocities. We would consider some of these actions war crimes by today's standards. For example, soldiers attacked towns and killed absolutely anyone who they suspected of supporting the enemy. Both sides were known to do this. Eventually, the war came to an end in 1648 with the Peace of Westphalia. This was a series of treaties which ended the fighting. The fighting wasn't ended out of a sense of altruism or doing the right thing, no. Instead it was done because everybody was completely exhausted. There were no available men to fight in the armies because most of the countryside had been destroyed. There was no food to feed the population, and the princes were pretty much bankrupt and didn't have the money to pay off their soldier. The effect of the 30 Years' War on Germany was massive. About 1/3 of the population of the German states died as a result of this conflict. That is similar to the Black Death. Once the Peace of Westphalia was signed and peace declared, then the territory could be divided up. France got territory from Spain and Germany. What was the Holy Roman Empire became divided into 360 separate states.
The Reformation of the Church and Renaissance thinking was undeniably linked. Whereas Erasmus wanted to correct the Church from within, others, led by German priest and scholar Martin Luther, demanded more radical solutions. Unlike earlier reformers who criticized the habits of the Church and its officials, he attacked church doctrine. Eventually, Luther's clash with the Catholic Church would lead to his excommunication. By then, his actions and writings triggered the Protestant Reformation. Soon, other humanists broke away from the Catholic Church. They included the Frenchman John Calvin, the Swiss reformer Ulrich Zwingli, and King Henry VIII. As the split between the Catholics and Protestants widened, what began as an ideological warfare erupted into violence and persecution. The 30 Years' War, though not entirely a religious war, is often cited as the culmination of a period of religious warfare.
I once saw a map of the casualties caused by the 30 Years' War. map of Germany. There are parts of Germany in this map which were identified as having 60% casualties as a result of the 30 Years' War. 30 Years' War is not entirely a religious war, but it's often cited as the culmination of a period of religious warfare. There's no denying the fact that disagreements about religion, which are present in the Middle Ages, but are intensified various reasons, but especially by the invention of the printing press in the 16th century, that religious disagreements lead to violence all over Europe.
During the Inquisition, Catholics and Protestants alike persecuted heretics and those thought to be possessed by the devil. In those days, that could mean almost anyone who wasn't a Christian.
And so trials are arranged. And the unfortunate truth is that all trials in this period, the Renaissance, Middle Ages, are, by our current standards, brutal affairs. It was broadly assumed that people spoke more truthfully when they were under the torture. So in all sorts of procedures, not just against heresy, not just against witches, the accused are put to the torture. And this was believed to get a more truthful response out of them. So the brutality that we perhaps associate with the witch trials was also part of normal judicial procedure.
Violence of all sorts is linked to religion in the 16th and especially in the 17th century. And it doesn't take a genius to figure out that, in fact, by the time you get to Voltaire in the 18th century, one of the reasons that he and those around him despise the Christian religion is that, as they see it, it has caused nothing but trouble, nothing but intolerance and bigotry and violence.
The French historian John Delumeau argued that throughout the medieval period, Europeans were only thinly Christianized. That if you scratched the surface of their Christian beliefs and practices, what you found underneath was a vast ocean of pagan, pre-Christian beliefs.
There's a fascinating anecdote of a 16th century Jesuit who remarks, why go to India to look for pagans when you can find them right here in Italy? That you can travel to the other side of the world and find people who need conversion to the true message of Christ. But you can also go to plenty of districts in southern Italy and find people who are essentially equally ignorant of the message of the gospel.
The French Wars of Religion. These wars lasted from 1562 to 1598. In France, the Protestants were called Huguenots. There was also much fighting in Spain too. Spain argued with England over religion in the subsequent Anglo-Spanish War, where the Spanish sent a great fleet, called an armada, to invade and crush the English. Unfortunately, it was crushed. Mr. Diakopoulos likes to joke that the Spanish armada failed because it didn't do enough miles to the galleon. I know, it's a terrible joke. Anyway, the 30 Years' War went from 1618 to 1648 and was fought mainly in Germany.